I've heard stories of girls coming out of bathroom stalls and then a guy standing there with a beard.
You cannot keep a boy out of your daughter's locker room.
Not if he identifies as a girl.
What else do I need to know about this?
I think that parents have got to find it within themselves to just really stand up to the bureaucracy and to policymakers and pretty much say, hell no, you're not going to do this to my kid.
So how old should a kid be before they're indoctrinated with the LGBTQIA plus agenda? First grade? Yeah, it's first grade. But before we get to that, subscribe and like our channel. Click on that little bell icon for notifications. Find Devil's Advocate podcast on your favorite platform. Pam Benigno runs our Education Policy Center Independence. You wrote a blockbuster column on what's going on in schools now and what the law allows. Why did you feel so compelled to do that?
I was compelled to write it because parents need to be aware of what their children are going to be exposed to. And this started with the revision of the social studies standards, which actually started because of a House bill that passed in 2019, 1192. And through that bill process of requiring that the history and social contributions of minorities be included in the state's academic standards, the bill was amended to include LGBTQ individuals. So that brought it into our social studies standards.
Let's do a little preface on this. Whenever we talk about this, people think, oh my goodness, she must hate the gay community. Oh no, they all hate this. They're just bigots. It has nothing to do with that. It has something to do with just being age appropriate. And when you told me what is actually being taught in school now by these new standards, I'm a completely amoral person. You're a moral person. I found this stuff offensive. And so this is about at what age do we start talking to kids about these issues? And to be honest, this sure sounds like indoctrination to me.
Oh, I agree. It definitely is. And through the revision of the standards process, the parents were just pleading with the State Board of Education to please go along with a compromise, and I won't go into all those details of how that compromise came about. It was all through the process, which is normal, to wait until fourth grade. But the State Board of Education under Democratic control said, nope, we're going to start it in first grade.
In first grade.
In first grade.
I remember you showing me how concerned parents were. Literally thousands of parents begged the school board, the state school board, don't change these standards. Don't do this. This is too young. I mean, you talk about actually being involved in the process. I mean, there were literally thousands of parents saying this is inappropriate for a first grader.
Yes, they did. But let's put this out on the table too. There were thousands of letters in support. So nobody has to tell us that we're a divided society. That's for sure. But part of this House bill required that a commission that was put together, also as a result of the House bill, to come up with resources for teachers to use. Now, originally, that bill was to bring together people to create resources to teach about African American history and Latino history and Asian history and so forth. But like I said, LGBTQ was added in, and so that was included. So last spring, the Colorado Department of Education had an announcement on their website that they had new LGBTQ resources for teachers to use. You see, this fall, all school districts, including charter schools in the state, must implement these new social studies standards. Now, must. But let me be very clear that the resources that we're going to talk about today are not required. Those are optional, but they're there, and there'll be plenty of teachers that will use them, or they think that they should use them. Some of it's going to depend on a school district.
So in other words, the State Board of Education, the Department of Education says, hey, you've got to teach these things. Let us put together a bunch of resources that you can use. I'm assuming these are books and videos and teaching guides and things like that, that you can use as to help you in your job.
Yes, for minorities. And then as far as LGBTQ, what they did, individuals, was they brought together a group of 18 teachers, and they had a 2-day teacher development time where they created these resources. Now, half of those teachers, because they have all this on their website, but half of those teachers are from districts that have a partnership with an organization called A Queer Endeavor out of CU Boulder, out of the education department. And this group has been training teachers on how to be more inclusive. I've watched their videos, I've read their materials. They want to turn what we think as normal as the upside down, really, so that there's no normal. And they also want to change what we think is age appropriate. So they do not believe in a binary, that gender is binary.
So let me see if I got this right. Our state-run school has a program called A Queer Agenda, or A Queer Endeavor.
Yes.
What a great Freudian slip that was. And their agenda is to push this worldview, this trans worldview, on younger and younger kids. And so out of the committee that made up made the decision, half of them come from the district that uses
that are partners, publicly partners with this group. Now, I don't know who ran the professional development. I'm just saying that when I looked at the list of teachers in the school districts, it's like, this makes sense.
Something that's been troubling me, I didn't quite understand that this was social studies standards that we're talking about. Now, I understand in health class, at some point you have the birds and bees conversation, your body is changing, whatever that is. You're not talking about that. You're not talking about biology standards. Social studies at first grade needs to know about the trans agenda. How is this a social studies issue? I am blanking out on this.
Well, what they did was, within the standards, maybe they're going to look at the differences between different cultures. But LGBTQ is stuck in there as well. So, and then various civic symbols. So let me give you some examples of these resources. So first grade, we'll talk about first grade. These are 6-year-olds, the ones that are losing their 2 front teeth. If their teacher chooses to use these resources, they may hear that their teacher may read them an article about Jared Polis and how he was the first openly gay governor.
Stop there.
Okay.
I just want to stop right there. First graders, 6 years old, who haven't had sex ed yet, need to find out that our governor was the first openly gay governor in the United States, which, by the way, great. This is terrific. First grade, excuse me. So what does that mean, teacher? So you are backed into talking about sex ed and homosexuality for a 6-year-old.
And it's going to depend on the teacher on how they answer that. If they say, oh, well, go home and ask your parents, or if they say, oh, let me explain. And actually they do. There's a video for first, second, and third grade where they can show the kids, and it's a sweet little, looks like a little first grade teacher. She's going to read a storybook. And before she starts reading the story, she says, sometimes girls love girls, and sometimes boys love boys. And then she reads a story about Harvey Milk and the gay pride flag, and how he, his process or his story of creating that. And so the little first graders, then they might see it in second grade, and then they might see it in third grade as well in social studies class.
Social studies class. Social studies class. Listen, I'm pro-gay marriage. I support the LGB community. This is important stuff. But at first grade, you don't need to be talking about who's having sex with whom. It's just so very wrong. And tell me if I'm wrong on this one. They start as fact that gender is not binary, that gender is a spectrum of things, which has got to be really confusing to any 6-year-old. It's confusing to a 60-year-old. So it seems like there is a fundamental question that the premise of, do we follow science that almost always, gender, sex, chromosomes are binary, or do we go into this political, sociological weirdness of, no, gender is this fluid thing, sex is this thing, a man can be a woman, a man can give birth, and menstruate at 6th grade. So are they building off, is the social studies standards built off the premise that sex is not binary?
Well, I don't think that, I don't really think so. I think that's certainly going to come up. That could certainly come up with some of the resources and the topics discussed, depending on what resources the teachers use. In 1st grade, it's more, it's more about just being gay, all right? And in 3rd grade, now I want you to just, putting LGBTQ aside, let's think about 3rd grade and age appropriateness.
Okay.
3rd graders learn that in 1978, California had a ballot initiative on the ballot, Proposition 6. And what that required was that the firing of any gay or lesbian teacher. So back to Harvey Milk. Harvey Milk fought that successfully.
It said we have to fire every gay teacher?
Yes, that's what Prop 6 said.
Said we need to fire every teacher.
Yeah.
That's gay or lesbian.
Yes, that's correct.
Well, I hope that failed.
It did.
Good.
It did. And then not too long after that, Harvey Milk was murdered along with the mayor of San Francisco. And that story we don't need to go into. So what they have for resources on the our Colorado State Department of Education is the audio from where somebody in 1978, I'm assuming it was 1978 after because he died in 1978. At the memorial service, somebody interviewed people and made a recording. And that is on our state's website for 3rd graders, 8-year-olds, to listen to.
And if they listen to that, what are they going to hear?
Oh, people talking about how that they're there because they, believed in his cause and so forth. But they also have another audio. And after his murderer was sentenced, he received a very controversial sentence. It was manslaughter. And they have an audio for 8-year-olds to listen to of people discussing this controversial sentencing. Now, let's put the fact that Harvey Milk was gay aside. Is this appropriate for an 8-year-old to be listening to, and especially in social studies class?
So 8 years old, they're learning about a gay man who was killed, the sentencing of manslaughter, and going into the killing of this guy as a social studies thing for an 8-year-old. That's the kind of stuff that sends kids into nightmares sometimes not. And it's a bit of history. Yeah, you have to, when you're talking about JFK, you're going to have to talk that he was killed. If you're talking about Abraham Lincoln, you're going to say he was assassinated. Harvey Milk the same way. But the only reason you're talking about Harvey Milk is because he's gay. Yes. So 6-year-old, we're talking about this guy because what he did in bed. We're talking about Jared Polis, not on his policies. And I've known Jared for, 25, 30 years he's been a friend. But we're not talking about him because he believes in this or that or what he did in Congress. No, we're talking about him because he has sex with other men. That's what makes him special. To a 6-year-old, if you don't find that offensive, there's something wrong.
Well, there are people out there trying to like I said, change what is age appropriate. Now if we could talk a minute about parents being notified. So in Colorado.
Well, I'm assuming that before a first grader learns that his governor has sex with men, that a parent has signed off on a permission slip or has been made aware of this or could pull the kid out before that.
No, absolutely not. In Colorado, it's law that you cannot teach comprehensive human sexuality until 4th grade. And parents have to be notified. They have to receive a detailed description, an outline of all the materials. They have the opportunity to opt their children out of that course, some of it or all of it. For social studies, there's nothing in law that says they have to let parents know we're going to be talking about these issues. There's nothing in law that says you can opt your child out.
I'm a pretty logical creature. So if you put this into an if-then statement, if you cannot talk about sexuality, human sexuality, until 4th grade, talking about Jared Polis being gay or Harvey Milk being gay in 1st grade is obviously a violation of talking about sexuality. Those two cannot live in the same universe unless, of course, you're pushing an agenda, and then to hell with the law that says you have to wait till fourth grade. How do they get around that? It seems like a complete violation of a policy that says not until 4th grade. At 4th grade, we're going to talk about how gay our governor is, but not until then.
If a school district chooses to offer a course on human sexuality, the legislature has created a long list of what you have to include. Now, all of those things do not have to be included in 1st grade, right? So that's part of it. They just say, it's not sex ed. It's not. This is different.
How do you define?
They're trying to normalize.
All right. Again, just the logic to me. This is how do you say that someone is gay or trans and not teach about sexuality? I get it, and I know we do all the identity politics. This guy's black. Now we're going to do black. This one person's a woman. We're going to do woman history. None of that has to do with whom they have sex. So when we do Harvey Milk, and I'm assuming Pete Buttigieg is
yes, there's a book about him too.
A book about him, of course.
1st grade.
Because 1st graders need to know about our transportation secretary, but only because he has sex with men. That's bizarre. It is illogical and inconsistent with this law. Go ahead and change the policy and say, no, we're going to teach sex ed in 1st grade so kids can understand what we're talking about.
Yeah, and so then parents would know. Of course, we don't want them to do that. Parents now...
We don't want them to make it into the 1st grade. We do want parents to know.
We want parents to know. And so what this has done is it's put parents in a very uncomfortable position. They need to go in to those 1st grade teachers, 2nd grade teachers, 3rd grade teachers, and they're going to have to ask them, I want to see all your social studies materials, and I want to know if you're going to be using any of these resources. It's just causing more conflict. It's just plain disappointing.
Having kids who went through the system and having a special needs kid who went through the system, it's amazing how much a parent needs to be an advocate. And it's harder, particularly on those early years, because you're counting ABCs, you're doing this, it's all pretty wholesome stuff. And I couldn't for the life of me think about going to a 1st grade teacher and saying, I want to see your social studies curriculum. I want to see your human sexuality curriculum. It sounds crazy, but it's not, is it?
No, it's not. It's very necessary today. And what I'd like to see is school boards, and I know many of them won't, but some of them might, you can put guardrails. So the state didn't say that parents have to know about this, but a school district board could pass policies that say that parents have to be notified if you're going to talk about LGBTQ in any subject area. and they have to see the materials, which they should be able to do anyway, and that they can opt out. So there's nothing stopping a school board from passing a policy like that to protect, because you can't control every teacher, right, in your school district.
So in other words, parents who hear this and have kids in first, second, third, what can I do? Talk to your school board. They can make sure it doesn't happen. You can talk to your teachers, make sure it doesn't happen. But what if it happens? There's really no recourse.
No, it's just, it really hits to the heart and soul of parents. I just heard yesterday of a mother who had read my op-ed before she went to bed, and she could not sleep that night. She was so upset and very distraught the next day. I've offered to talk to her. I haven't heard yet from her, but that's how it really hits deep down. Parents want to protect their children. They're the only ones that really know when their children are mature enough emotionally and cognitively to be able to understand these issues and handle them properly.
And by the way, if you want to read it, just go to completecolorado.com, completecolorado.com. And this op-ed was enlightening, because I don't think most Coloradans knew that the LGBTQIA plus agenda is being rammed down first graders' throats. That's, if I had my way and we did gun safety classes in first grade, I can only imagine the uproar. Even though I'd say, hey, saves lives, kids need to know not to handle guns and what they look like, and great. No, it would never happen. This happens. I find it repugnant.
And if they go to the complete article, then they'll have links and they can go in and see them for themselves. They can look at those resources.
So in other words, don't believe what Pam is saying. Check out.
Well, there's more. There's more than we have time to talk about.
Exactly. The process of lobbying the school district to take care of your kid is so wrong, in that I don't lobby some committee to choose my kid's doctor. I don't lobby some committee to say, hey, can I change the diet of my kid? I think he's eating too many Fruit Loops. But the most important thing, education, you have to go lobby a committee for your kid. That's what I found at Boulder Valley, and you cannot do it. You cannot win.
That's what I was going to say. You can try. Sometimes parents just need to, if they're in this situation, they just may go to a teacher very quietly, talk to the teacher, say, would you let me know, please? And I'll just keep my child home that day, from school, especially.
Or not.
Yeah, or not. Yes. Yeah, and there'll be people out. I really believe there's going to be watchdogs out there watching to make sure that schools are teaching the standards. It's not nice. It's not nice. And taking away parents' authority, and the policymakers need to respect parents.
Why don't they?
Because they have an agenda, and they feel like government. They feel like they know what's best, and they're trying to change the culture.
Are these the same people who are trying to close charter schools as well? There must be an overlap on the Venn diagram.
There would be some overlap. There would be some overlap, but not necessarily. There may be people that want to queer classrooms that like charter schools too.
Talk to me about libraries, because you've also done some work finding what goes into libraries in schools and what gets kicked out. If parents want to see what's in a library, can they?
Are you talking about school libraries?
School libraries.
Of course they can. They could look at an entire list, of books. And that's a really hot issue. And so many groups are saying that parents are trying to ban books, and they're not. I don't think the ones in Colorado are. They're just saying, this particular book is not appropriate for elementary or for middle school. Would you please just put it at a high school level? And now they're book banners or they're censors. Yeah. And then there was legislation this year that was taking away local control. School districts already have policies on controversial books, And fortunately, that bill at the school district level died. There is one for the public libraries. But another bill did come up on non-legal name changes.
Yeah. What exactly did that do?
So that was an interesting process. It evolved like most bills do. But what it comes down to is that any child in any Colorado public school, and that includes charter schools, if they decide that if it's a boy and he decides that he's a girl, they can change their name at school so that their name ID, the yearbook picture on his paper, that they're required by law. A teacher is required by law to call that child by his preferred name. It's a non-legal change. It doesn't change it legally. Now, the state left it open as far as school districts passing a policy to implement this. They have to. They are required to pass a policy. So a school district board could pass a policy that says, and we will bring parents in on these conversations. They still have to call the child by that name. But right now, what's going on in some school districts, they don't tell the parents.
So let me see if I got this right. By the new law, every school district has now forfeited to a child what the child is going to be called in school and on sports and in the yearbook. And now it's the child's decision solely.
Starting in kindergarten.
And there's nothing there that requires not just parental permission on it, but parental notification. Now, a school district could put that requirement on themselves, and I hope they do, but a first grader can say, my name's John, call me Jan, but don't tell mom and dad. A 6-year-old can do this, and the school is required to call him Jan and not tell the parents. Do I have that basically right?
I think the law says, and I'm not an attorney, but the law says you have to call them Jan. It doesn't touch on the parental notification. So a school district can go either way. We're hoping school districts would say, and we're going to bring the parents in and have this discussion, and the parents are going to know. But as it is now, we know, especially in high school, many of them are not telling parents. And even at the elementary school level, in some cases, they won't tell the parents that a child is transitioning. One district says in their policy, unless it's an education distraction, then we'll tell the parents. This is elementary.
You've met my son many times. He's allergic to dairy, and he has to take a little pill if he's going to have something that's dairy. It's a lactate. It's not even a drug. It's an enzyme. We have to fill out forms every year just for him to be able to take a little lactate. But if he decides that he wants to be called something else, they have to do it, and they don't have to tell me. So even for a vitamin, I need permission. Anything else? And by the way, my son has Down syndrome. He identifies as a race car. I mean, really, he doesn't drink water. He drinks gasoline. He doesn't go to the doctor. He goes to the mechanic. So he has every right as a kid with Down syndrome to say, no, call me Lightning McQueen. And they will have to call him Lightning McQueen, and that's it.
Yes, because that's what he identifies as. Yes. He couldn't just change his name every day, but that's what he identifies as a car. So, yeah.
He could be a car.
Mm-hmm.
I have no say in that.
No.
I'm at a loss for words. And what's so difficult, and help me with this, is that the cancel culture has been so violent and so vicious that if you bring up your concerns about this, you're a hater and you're a bigot. And you can say, no, that's just not age appropriate. This is not about sexuality. This is not about me hating whatever. People want to be trans, go be trans. But this is too young. No, you're a hater. And so parents feel like they really can't speak up. you're giving your kid to the school for 6, 7, 8 hours a day, and they have complete control. But parents don't want to be called bigots, haters, racists in their own neighborhoods. So there's a real North Korean thing going on here where you are just beaten into submission. What do you say to those parents? Because you know that they're out there.
Well, I would say that, you're going to have to decide where your child's going to be educated. And the safest place is going to be to homeschool them. Not everybody can do that.
It's a very expensive proposition.
Well, yeah, depending on the family income situation. Private school is expensive. Then you can send them to, if you can get into a more conservative, I'll say, charter school, but they're required, there's no waivers for social studies, there's no waivers for the non-legal name change bill. You can't get out from under that as a charter school.
A million times, charter schools are not private. Charter schools are government schools.
Public schools, that's right. And I will tell you, because I hear stories that even the most conservative charter schools that are public schools, there are teachers in those schools as well that are going to bring in books that you might object to, or some of these resources.
As even if you can get your kid into a charter school. I mean, I think about Golden View Classic Academy. They've got 500 kids on a waiting list for a school that is like 400 kids already. You can't get in there. So I guess my message would be, these are your kids. If you're going to get a backbone, this is worth getting a backbone for. This is worth getting involved. What do you recommend parents do?
I would agree that they need to get involved, and they need to realize that, yes, this may cause some divisions. I remember in 2019 at a particular school where they had brought in books, the principal had brought in books like Jacob's New Dress for kindergarten and first grade. The entire plot of the story was Jacob wanted a dress he could wear to school. And half the parents for it, half were against it. And there were many other books too that were sexual in nature. And one parent told me that it was breaking her heart that this was her community, and now they're polarized. It divided the school. Very, very sad, very sad. But that's what you have to put your child first.
And by the way, you're not talking about Jacob being an actual kid. If it was an actual kid who wanted to wear a dress to school, great. I don't care. It's that's up to he and his parents. But to have first graders have to learn about gender dysphoria at 6 years old,
yes,
is damaging. And it really, I think, confuses kids, and we wonder why suicide is up. We wonder why teenage angst is up. This is sinful what we're doing to these kids before they're at the age of emancipation.
Right, and it's not just because they pulled a library book off the shelf. These are being read to the classroom, like Jacob's New Dress. This is teacher reading it to the kids, and then there's questions to ask. There's curriculum to go with it.
I remember when my daughter brought home the Gender Bear. Do I have that right?
The gingerbread man?
Oh, gingerbread. Yeah, the genderbread man. That was it. And it was how to teach that there's not two sexes, but all these different. And she was in third grade. It was bizarre. Unfortunately, she and I could talk about it, and she hated it, but she knew she had to put up with it. When your kid comes home with a genderbread man, what should a parent do?
Well, the parent should go and, first have a conversation with the child, ask the child a lot of questions, see what the teacher said. Then I'd go and talk to the teacher first, and then you talk to the principal.
And I did that many times.
I bet you did.
Tell me about the resources you have at the Education Policy Center that might help parents with this. Not only the article that you've done on this, anything on the name changes, anything where they can get involved, how to take control of your kids' education as best you can in this state.
Well, we have the School Choice for Kids website that has all of the schools in the state, both public and private, has information about homeschooling, so parents can, find out more about schools there.
And that's
School Choice for Kids, and that's
.com.
.org.
.org.
Yeah, .org. Yeah. There's information about homeschooling up on our website as well. I have a whole section on our website, Independence Institute's website, thinkfreedom.org, about for school boards. And parents might want to go and look at those resources. So we have a paper on curriculum transparency with a policy in there that school boards can adopt. There's informational videos. There's a great one by an attorney that talks about Colorado law and bathroom usage, locker rooms. People are all concerned about Title IX and those new rule changes. That's already law in Colorado.
You cannot keep a boy out of your daughter's locker room.
Not if he identifies as a girl.
And how do you prove that he identifies as a girl? It's self-reporting.
Yes. I'm not an expert in how those young men do that, but I've heard some stories. I've heard stories of girls coming out of bathroom stalls and then a guy standing there with a beard, and the principal's saying, "I'm sorry, we can't do anything about this."
It just makes you feel powerless over your own child's life and learning. And I've never seen anything like this in Colorado. Now, Colorado's never had private school choice in any way. We've never had vouchers or anything that really looks like that. It's always been government-run schools. And if you're wealthy enough to afford homeschooling or afford a private school, you have an exit. Most people can't do that.
Right. Well, I homeschooled for 6 years. I drove an old car, lived in a house with one bathroom. You can do it, but you've got to be willing to sacrifice and live on just one income. In our case, there was one income. Yes.
When COVID hit, it was an eye-opener for a lot of parents. Why? Because you're finally watching what goes on in the classroom on that Zoom meeting. And my daughter used to tell me about how she learned about systematic racism in every classroom. And lo and behold, I'm there listening. I hear it in her economics class. I hear it in her English class. I heard it in a yoga class preaching about systemic racism. I wanted to jump through the computer. This is just normal stuff. And I think that has done more to push school choice around the nation than anything else. And a lot of states are having ESAs, educational savings accounts. Is there anything on the horizon here in Colorado that those who want parental choice, is there something out there we can hope for? Or is it just all defense?
I think most of it's going to be defense. I have been involved in the school choice movement since the late 80s. Certainly, our legislature isn't going to pass anything, the current legislature, and if they did, I wouldn't want to participate in it because of the strings attached. But a school district could still could go back and do what Douglas County did years ago. We've had 2 voucher programs in Colorado. They were both struck down by the courts. But if today a school district did it, they could.
They could give parents more choices.
They could.
What else do I need to know about this?
I think that parents have got to find it within themselves to just really stand up to the bureaucracy and to policymakers and pretty much say, hell no, you're not going to do this to my kid.
Shaming is a powerful, powerful tool. Shame has been used throughout history in religious orders and communities to keep people, quote, in line. And that shaming is now being used in a politically correct way in communities throughout the state and through education, which is, you don't want to be shamed. You don't want to stand up and so that's inappropriate because we're going to say you're that religious right zealot and you're just a hater and a bigot, and parents are going to be shamed. As a guy who gets shamed a lot, it's kind of fun. And parents need to stand up. Nobody else is going to do this for your kid. And one parent can make a huge difference in a school and in a school district. I've always been amazed how when one person, like you did in the 80s, gets involved, the changes that happen afterwards.
That's right. And sometimes, well, you always need to be politically smart. Sometimes that's working behind the scenes in a quiet way, and that can make more impact than a whole lot of noise, which then the media comes in and, then you're accused of being of the religious right, and so we'll disregard you. So parents they've got to weigh that. But no matter what, they must shine a light on what's going on, and that's what we do at Independence Institute.
Thinkfreedom.org. Look for CompleteColorado.com. Pam's great article. It was an eye-opener. I hope it changes some policy. Pam, thank you so much.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed that conversation, by all means, click one of these other great programs. We have the best conversations with the most fascinating Coloradans. And subscribe to our channel. Just click down below and hit that little bell button too. You don't want to miss a single show.